There's a small change. I think the first speaker is offline. And we have Dr. Nurul Huda online. And her paper is titled Exam Anxiety in Undergraduate Medical Students. Dr. Nurul Huda, the
Good
floor is
evening,
yours.
sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thanks. Go on.
Shall I start, sir? Hello?
Yes, doctor.
Shall I start, sir?
Please start.
Exam anxiety in undergraduate medical students. I am Dr. Nurul Huda, final year postgraduate, Department of Psychiatry from KAPU Medical College, Tiruchirappalli. Introduction. Exam anxiety is defined as excess anxiety about the particular exam or about assessment in general. There's a small about a particular exam or an assessment in general. Exam anxiety is a form of performance anxiety in which individuals experience intense distress and anxiety in testing circumstances. Fear about exams influence the academic performance of the students. While mild anxiety is considered to be good for the students to keep them task-oriented, excess anxiety is associated with poor performance. Though stress is a survival mechanism, if our mind doesn't adapt to it, it leads to anxiety. Students start to consider exam as a burden, and this leads to avoidance of the feared situation, that is the exam, which in turn affects the future of the students. This study is aimed to identify undergraduate medical students who have a high level of exam anxiety in order to enable to ameliorate the exam anxiety by appropriate intervention, so they can improve their academic performance. Method. A cross-sectional study was conducted in August and September 2021 among 300 undergraduate medical students studying from first year to final year in KAPU Medical College, Tiruchirappalli. Participants completed an online questionnaire that had socio-demographic data, and exam anxiety was assessed using the Westside Test Anxiety Scale. The Westside Test Anxiety Scale, it was proposed by Richard Driscoll. It is a 10-item brief scale, and each item is measured on an ordinal 5-point Likert type scaling. Likert scoring is not at all, never true, 1, slightly seldom true, 2, moderately sometimes true, 3, highly usually true, 4, extremely always true, 5. The test anxiety score is obtained by summing the scores of 10 items and then dividing it by 10. Interpretation of test anxiety score: 1 to 1.9, comfortably low test anxiety; 2 to 2.4, normal or average test anxiety; 2.5 to 2.9, normal, high normal test anxiety; 3 to 3.4, moderately high; 3.5 to 3.9, high test anxiety; 4 to 5, extremely high anxiety. A score of 3 or more is considered to be abnormal. Inclusion criteria: undergraduate medical students from first year to final year studying in KAPU Medical College, age group between 17 years to 25 years. The students who are willing to participate in the study and give an informed consent. Exclusion criteria: students that are not willing to participate, students already diagnosed with anxiety disorder and other psychiatric disorder. Study center was undergraduate medical students from final year, first year to final year in KAPU Medical College, Tiruchirappalli. Sample size was 300. Duration of study, August and September 2021. Data collection. Data were collected using online questionnaire. Data analysis. SPSS software version 26 was used. This is 300 undergraduates were taken, among which 150 students were male and 150 were female. 75 students from each year was taken. Each year consists of equal number of male and females in approximately. The upcoming table shows the frequency and percentage of level of anxiety in each student. As we can see in this table, that score, according to the interpretation, comfortably low test anxiety has 15.3%, normal or average test anxiety has 19%, high normal test anxiety has 22.3%, and moderately high percentage 24.7%, high test anxiety 13.7%, extremely high anxiety 5%. This is the same thing. This is the pie chart showing various types of anxieties in students. As we can see below, about 3, we have 43, more than 43% of the students fall here. Comparison of gender differences. A t-test was conducted to find whether there was any gender differences between male and female in an exam test anxiety. As we can see that the p-value is 0.020, which is significant. This is less than 0.05. It shows that there is a significant difference in gender. As we can see here, there is a high exam anxiety in female students when compared to male students. Comparison among various groups, post hoc test and homogeneous subsets were conducted to find whether there is any significant differences from high first year to final year. In this table, we can see that when the first year is compared with second and pre-final year, there is a significant difference, and the same applies to final year. As we can see that final year and comparison with first year and second year, there is a significant difference. So, first year and final year students experience a significant increase in level of exam anxiety when compared to second and pre-final year students. That is, the p-value is significant, less than 0.05. Discussion. This study showed that there is a high level of exam anxiety in females when compared to males. These gender differences could be due to social rules that are assigned to them, due to which females are under greater pressure to perform than the males. When comparing among various years, first year and final year experience greater exam pressure than the second year and pre-final year. This difference could be due to break system in the first and final year, while there is a carryover system in the second and pre-final year. This study also showed that there is a significant number of undergraduate medical students experiencing high level of exam anxiety. Hence, by identifying these students, we can help them by taking appropriate measures like psychotherapy, example, cognitive behavioral therapy, relaxation therapy, and pharmacotherapy, in order to ameliorate exam anxiety and improve performance. Here are my few references. Thank you.
Good presentation, Dr. Nurul Huda. Thanks for sticking to time. And I think you did sum it up all very well. Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next presentation is an offline presentation by Dr. Sundaramurthy, who is going to present a paper titled Prevalence of Depression Among Post-Stroke Individuals and Its Impact on Quality of Life.
Good evening to all. My paper title goes like this. It is a prevalence of depression among post-stroke individuals and its impacts on quality of life. It is a cross-sectional study regarding introduction. Stroke is
Please introduce yourself. Where are you from?
So I am Dr. Sundaramurthy, final year postgraduate from Tanjore Medical College.
Yeah.
Regarding introduction, stroke is also known as a cerebrovascular attack. It is the second leading cause of death and the third leading cause of the disability. There is a rapid increase in the number of stroke cases complicated by the dementia and depression. Post-stroke depression, that is PSD, is one of the important complications and the most frequent neuropsychiatric consequences of the stroke. Some of the studies shown that prevalence of depression following the stroke attack vary widely from the range of 25 to 60%, and post-stroke depression can affect the quality of life. The aim of the objectives of this study are, the primary objectives are to find out the prevalence of depression among the post-stroke individuals and to study the impact of depression on the quality of life among the post-stroke individuals. And the secondary objectives are to compare the quality of life between the depressive and non-depressive post-stroke individuals. The materials are, the study was done among the patients attending the stroke clinic in a tertiary care hospital during the month of June to September 2021. The study participants were those who were diagnosed as recent large vessel stroke victims within a span of 2 to 6 months duration. The patients were enrolled consecutively till the sample size of 60 was attained. The tools used are Hamilton Depression Rating Scale, and the tools used to measure the quality of life are WHO Quality of Life Scale. Regarding the result, in the current study, there were 60 patients enrolled. There were 38 males and 22 females. Most of the patients, that is 59, had a ischemic stroke, and most of the patients, that is 48, were from the urban side and mostly belongs to the upper lower socioeconomic class. 52 patients had only any one physical comorbidity. And regarding prevalence of the depression, in our study, it was found that around 50% of the study participants, that is 30 patients, were suffering from the depression, that is post-stroke depression. And among the depressed patients, majority of them, that is 29, were moderate to severely depressed. Regarding quality of life of the study participants, the overall quality of life score in our study was 69.18 plus or minus 18. The physical quality of life and the environmental quality of life were the least affected, whereas the psychological quality was affected moderately, and the highest domain to be affected was social relations quality of life. And next, moving on to the comparison of quality of life between the stroke patients with and without post-stroke depression. The quality of life is better among those without depression compared with the those having depression. This shows the association between the post-stroke depression and the quality of life. There is a strong negative correlation between the quality of life and the depression scale. All the four domains, that is physical health, psychological health, social relationship, and the environmental domain, had an inverse relationship with the increase in the HAM-D depression score. Regarding discussion, in our study, the PSG was found among the half of the participants, with the majority of them having the moderate to severe depression. It is obvious that burden of PSG is very high among the stroke survivors. The key determinants of quality of life are physical, social, functional, and the psychological factors. In the current study, the quality of life of the stroke patients has been affected in all the domains. Of the various domains, the least affected was the environmental quality of life, and the maximum to be affected was the social relationship quality of life. Association between the post-stroke depression and the quality of life have been studied and found that depression is the major independent variable that is cross-sectionally correlated with the low quality of life at any time after stroke. In our study, we found that as the level of depression increases, quality of life is affected and interfered to the maximum. Negative effect of post-stroke depression was evident in all four domains of the WHO quality of life scale and was found to be statistically significant. This finding indicates that depression among the stroke survivors is an independent predictor of various domains of the quality of life regardless of the stroke severity. The subgroup analysis of quality of life among those with and without post-stroke depression has been significant, has shown significant difference in the quality of life. Those having depression are having poorer quality of life compared to those without depression. Our study findings that PSG is associated with the low quality of life is consistent with the other studies. Despite significant therapeutic advances in post-stroke management in the acute phase, has been framed application of secondary prevention principles in clinical practice is far from optimal. Accordingly, psychological well-being of the stroke patient is an important target to improve the quality of life of secondary prevention in post-stroke individuals. The limitation being the hospital-based study and the smaller sample size, and the mental status quality of life prior to the stroke patients is unknown, and this cause-effect relationship between the post-stroke depression and quality of life cannot be explained owing to the cross-sectional nature. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sundaramurthy. That was more than your study. I think you are taxed with the need to present within 5 minutes. So for the presenters who are going to come henceforth, online and offline, I would say take your time. It's your study. Present it in a more relaxed manner. Time really doesn't matter. I think you should not pay the price for the organizers pushing the sessions very close to the end point. So I would recommend whoever's presenting next to take your time. 5 minutes is just an arbitrary limit. This is more of an exercise that you getting on stage and doing your first paper. I think you should enjoy the experience, though there is very little audience here. Take your time. And thanks, Dr. Sundaramurthy. That was a very nice study. You've gone above and beyond the scope of a free paper during all these correlation analysis. I wonder what you used for correlation analysis.
Pearson correlation.
Okay. So with that, we thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I hope you receive your certificate. And we'll move on to the presentation by Dr. Jeevana Sai, who's going to present his paper titled A Study of Sleep Disturbance During COVID-19.
Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Jeevana from Bhaskar Medical College, Hyderabad, Telangana. So the title is A Study of Sleep Disturbance During COVID-19. Coming to the introduction, the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic and the accompanying lockdown measures are having a major psychological impact on the affected people. So many were forced to home confinement, exposing individuals to increased risk for sleep disturbance and fear of contracting the virus, while future uncertainties were commonly seen among general population too. So the need of the study, sleep is a ubiquitous phenomena with huge, pervasive and cyclical impact on our basic physiological process, example metabolism, immune system, behavior, cognition and emotions. Sleep problems appear to have been common during the ongoing pandemic, leading to higher level of psychological distress. The aim of the study is to assess the severity of insomnia during COVID-19 pandemic in general population. Coming to the methodology, the study period is of 5 months, that is from April 2021 to August to 2021. The study design is a cross-sectional observational study. The subjects were the general population. Remove the mic. The sampling method is snowball technique. The sample size is of 155 and the measuring instruments are demographic questionnaire, insomnia severity index questionnaire. Coming to the inclusion and exclusion criteria, person above 18 years of age and those who could understand English were included in the study. And the exclusion criteria, person unable to comprehend the sleep questionnaire and person who are infected with COVID-19 were excluded from the study. Coming to the results and discussion, in the overall sample, the mean total insomnia severity index score was 13.07 with the standard deviation of 4.26 with 33% meeting the diagnostic criteria of clinical insomnia, that is clinical insomnia score greater than 14, which is less when compared to these studies. Coming to the age-wise distribution versus mean ISI scores, with increase in age, the mean scores also increased. This was in accordance with the following studies. Next, gender versus mean insomnia severity index score. Using student t-test, no significant gender difference were found in the mean ISI scores. The females with 12.96, whereas male 13.15 with a p-value 0.78. Next, family status versus mean ISI scores. There were no significant difference in the sleep disturbance between nuclear families and joint families, with the mean ISI scores in the nuclear family is 13.2, while in joint family it is 12.5 with a p-value 0.47. Marital status versus mean ISI score. Married participants have significantly higher sleep disturbance than unmarried. The mean ISI score in married participants is 14.3, while in unmarried participants it is 12.4 with the p-value less than 0.01. Relation of mean ISI score with the family history of COVID. No significant difference in the sleep disturbance was found between those with the family history of COVID and those without such history, with a p-value 0.8. Next, effect of perception of COVID as a dangerous disease versus non-dangerous on ISI scores. The mean ISI score of attitude towards COVID, perceiving it as a dangerous disease, 13, was not significantly higher than those of who did not think it to be a dangerous disease, 12.1 with a p-value 0.34. Coming to the limitations, it is a small study sample. The survey was a self-reporter questionnaire, leaving a scope for the bias in the self-reporting, and the participants having physical comorbidities and those taking medications were not included in the study. Coming to the conclusion and future directives, our study revealed prevalence of clinical insomnia in 33% of general population, and the sleep problems appear to have been common during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and found to be associated with intense psychological distress. Sleep problems therefore deserve urgent attention and measures to tackle stress in those persons suffering from insomnia. Further studies focusing on sleep problems and its association with psychological distress should be considered to provide psychological support accordingly. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Jeevana, I have a question.
Sir.
In what order did you present your results? There were results which you presented which did not have significance, then there were some which had significance.
Yes, sir.
Based on p-values you talked about. Why did you order it in such a way? What was the rationale? I just want to know.
So there was a 33% meeting the diagnostic criteria of clinical insomnia, sir. And again, I compared in the gender-wise and marital status.
Yeah, you have compared with the nuclear families, joint families, and what, where you look at your data. But when you present, there has to be a rationale on what results you put first and what you put at the last.
Okay, sir.
And I think that should be based on the significance values that you get.
Okay, sir.
The more significant results should come on top.
Okay, sir.
And less significance results should come, or either way, in any way, ascending
sir.
order, ascending, but there should be some kind of an order to it,
Okay, sir.
right? Or it should be an order followed by a paper that you're trying to emulate.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, Doctor. That was a good presentation, a nice study. And now we move on to the online presentation by Dr. Yamini on the topic with the title of Internet Addiction and its Association with Quality of Sleep and Self esteem, I suppose. Go on, doctor. Dr. Yamini, you can start. Oh, Dr. Yamini, 1 minute, please hold on. There's an announcement that we want to make.
The bouquet and dinner will arrange at IDA Sudaha Auditorium near Velamal Medical College. Start from 7 p.m.
Okay, that was the invitation for the banquet, which follows the function. There's hardly anyone here. Dr. Yamini, you can go on. Dr. Yamini, hold on, we're not hearing you. Dr. Yamini, you're on mute. Have you unmuted yourself? We're still not hearing you. Your headphone is not plugged in properly. Your headphone into the system. The technicians are recommending that you take off your headphones and just speak if you are on a laptop. That is. Yeah, please go on.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you're audible now. Please. Please start.
Visible, sir. Is it audible, sir?
Yes, doctor, you're audible. Please start. You're audible. Please start. You're not audible again. Yeah,
Sir, it's audible now, sir.
yeah, it is audible now.
My topic today will be internet addiction, its association with quality of sleep and self-esteem in medical students. It's a cross-sectional study. And I thank my faculty members for giving me this opportunity to present here. And to start with the introduction, in recent years, the phenomenon of access to cell phone and addiction to internet have increased among students due to its many application attractiveness. This excess internet use can have an impact on their sleep quality, leading to insomnia and other sleep-related problems, and can affect their self-esteem also. This addiction can hinder their studies and can have impact on their long-term career goals and can have wide and detrimental consequences in society as a whole. Excessive internet use is defined as when internet use has become excessive, uncontrolled and time-consuming to the point of timelessness and severely disrupting people's lives. The aim of the study is to assess internet addiction in medical students and its relationship with quality of sleep and self-esteem. Method, the study was conducted in 200 medical undergraduate students and CRRIs. All students of the study were subjected to the following three questions, namely the Young Internet Addiction Test, Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, and Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale. Coming to the scales, Young Internet Addiction Test, this questionnaire consists of 20 statements, and the participants are asked to rate questions on a 5-point Likert scale, with 0 being not applicable to the questions asked and 5 being applicable always. And in between scores of rare, occasional, frequent, and often used. And this maximum score is of 100 points, 0 to 30 indicating normal level of internet use, and 31 to 49 indicating mild level, and 50 to 79 indicating moderate level, and scores more than 80 indicate severe dependence upon the internet. This assesses area of productivity, social behavior, emotional connection, and general patterns of internet use. And coming to Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, this Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index contains 19 self-read questions and 5 questions to be rated by the bed partner, and they are combined to form 7 component scores, each of which has a range of 0 to 3 points.
of 0 indicating no difficulty in sleep and 3 indicating severe difficulty. The 7 component scores are then added to yield one global score with a range of 0 to 21 points, with 0 indicating no difficulty and 21 indicating severe difficulty in all areas. The 7 components include subjective sleep quality, sleep latency, sleep duration, habitual sleep efficiency, sleep disturbances, use of medications, and daytime dysfunction. And coming to Rosenberg self-esteem scale, it is a 10-item scale that measures global self-worth by measuring both the positive and negative feelings about the self. All items are answered using a 4-point Likert scale format ranging from strongly agree to strongly disagree. Items 2, 5, 6, 8, 9 are reverse 4 because they indicate the negative feeling about the self, and give strongly disagree 1 point, with strongly agree 4 points, with in between points of 2 giving to disagree and 3 given to agree score. So some scores of all 10 items are taken into account, with higher scores indicating higher self-esteem. And the studies show that people high in self-esteem they claim to be more likable and attractive, and they tend to form more better relationships and make better impressions. Low self-esteem is more likely than high to lead to overall depression under some circumstances. Overall, the benefits of high self-esteem fall into 2 categories, namely enhanced initiative and pleasant feeling. Inclusion criteria: UG and CRRI students of a college are included, and those willing to participate in study are included. And exclusion criteria: students who are not willing for the study. Study center, it is carried out in undergraduate and CRRI students of KFUP Medical College and the MGMGH Trichy. Sample size is 200 of students were included. Duration of study was from August 2021 to September 2021. All data were collected through online questionnaire. Data analysis was done by using SPSS software version 26. And the results, the study was conducted in 200 medical students and CRIs with 40 members from each year and 40 members from CRRI. The sample contained 100 males and 100 females. The table containing frequency of internet addiction, sleep quality, and self-esteem issues. And in this table, we can see that there was 4.5% who had normal level of internet use, and 13.5% had mild level, and 60% had moderate, and 22% had severe level of internet addiction. In sleep quality indicating no difficulty in 13.5%, and 6.5% had mild difficulty, and moderate difficulty in 54%, and 26% reported having severe difficulty in sleep. And self-esteem was about 35% had low self-esteem, and 47.5% had moderate self-esteem, with high self-esteem in 17.5%. And the frequency results is the same as the previous slide, and the pie chart also shows the same. And here there is a comparison between male and female in level of internet addiction, sleep quality, and self-esteem. As table, we can see that there is a statistically significant difference in gender, with males showing higher level of internet addiction than female, and there is no statistical difference in the sleep quality and self-esteem among male and female. And this is the same. And here this table shows comparison among various years in internet and internet addiction, sleep quality, and self-esteem. Here we compared various students like first year, second year, third year, pre-final, final, and CRRI students. Here we can see that first year and CRRI students had higher level of internet addiction, and this in turn had consequences on his sleep quality and self-esteem. And post-hoc test and homogeneous subtests were used to compare results in various years. The table shows differences in the level of internet addiction among various years. It shows that the level of internet addiction is more among first year and CRRI students. The first year may be due to exposure to mobile phones for the first time in first year students, and can make them explore more because of the fascinating feature. The increased use in CRRI students may be due to increased working hours and loneliness due to variations in working hours. The higher level of internet scores of more than 80 correlates with low self-esteem scores in the Rosenberg scale, and a global sleep component scores in the range of 18 to 21. The relation between high internet usage and sleep quality and self-esteem was found to be statistically significant. And coming to the discussion card, we aim to determine the prevalence of internet addiction and its association with sleep quality and self-esteem among medical university students and CRRIs. Our study revealed that there is a significant gender difference in the level of internet addiction, with males having higher level of internet addiction. The study also revealed that higher the level of internet addiction, more is the disturbance in sleep quality and self-esteem. Sleep disturbance can also lead to potential internet addiction, and this problem has also to be addressed. The level of internet addiction, as I told, is more among the first year students and CRRI students. They have more severe sleep disturbances and low self-esteem on comparison to students of other years. It is also found that self-esteem is significantly related to internet addiction, and a decrease in self-esteem may be associated with insomnia, thus making students aware of potential risks of internet addiction, and making them understand its association with sleep and self-esteem can bring about changes that can help them to concentrate on more productive work. Thank you. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yamini, and that was a very interesting study, I would say. I would have preferred if you had just taken 2 parameters to compare, but still it was a very good study and you presented it quite well. I think the next time, I think you should just take 2. I would be more interested to see if internet addiction and self-esteem go together, or how they relate to each other. And also similarly with internet addiction and sleep quality. I think much has been said about internet addiction and sleep quality, but I'm impressed with you picking up the self-esteem as a measure. Anyway, thank you for your presentation, and we move on to the next presentation. by Dr. Shobana, titled Perceived Stress and Coping Strategies Among Students Who Appeared in NEET UG Examination. Over to Dr. Shobana.
வீடியோ பாஸ் பண்ண முடியல, போஸ்ட் அலோவ் பண்ணலன்னு வருது. இதுல இருக்கீங்க டாக்குமெண்ட் இப்போ தெரியுதா? Hello sir, good evening sir. I am Dr. Shobana, final year postgraduate student from KPV Vishwanathan Government Medical College, Tiruchirappalli. My topic is perceived stress and coping strategies among students who appeared in NEET UG examination. Introduction. NEET undergraduate examination is demanding and stressful. It is noted that these students go through high stress during their preparation phase. Stress is an external constraint that put an individual both mentally and physically strained. Stressors faced by these students include vast quotient to be studied, time pressure to meet deadlines, fear of making careless mistakes in the exam. Stress is a normal and mostly beneficial part of our life that can help one learn and grow. Most people are more active, creative, and productive because unexpected and unmanageable stress is damaging to among students who appeared in NEET UG exam. Material and methods: study using cross-sectional study, study center, students residing at Trichy, study duration 1 month, September 2021, study population, the students appear for NEET UG examination. Sample size 100, sampling method, simple random sampling. Sampling frame was prepared among students appeared in NEET UG examination by contacting various coaching centers in Trichy, and the participants were selected randomly up to the desired sample size. Study instrument, a semi-structured online questionnaire was given containing the social demographic data, perceived stress scale, and bespoke strategy inventory. Perceived stress scale. Perceived stress scale by Sheldon Cohen was used for measuring the perception of stress among these students. It is a measure of the degree to which situation in one's life are appraised as stressful. The score was calculated for each student from 10 items. Scores ranges from 0 to 30, which is low stress, 14 to 26 is moderate stress, 27 to 40, high perceived stress. Bespoke. Bespoke inventory by Carver et al., which is a validated and updated version of the Cope inventory, used to assess various coping strategies. It consists of 14 categories, each having 2 items, thus total 28 items. And the categories are self-destruction, active coping, denial, substance use, use of emotional support, use of instrument support, behavioral disengagement, venting, positive reframing, planning, humor, acceptance, religion, and self-blame. Inclusion criteria: students appear in NEET UG examination aged 16 to 19 years, those who agree to participate in the study and give informed consent. Exclusion criteria: patients not willing to give consent and past history of psychiatric illness. Data collection: all data were collected through online questionnaire. Data analysis: SPSS Corpus 16 was used for data analysis. The results: the data were collected among 100 students appeared for NEET UG examination, and this figure shows 46% have high perceived stress and 49% have moderate stress. And this is the table showing association between This table shows association between perceived stress and social demographic characteristics. There is statistically significant association between age groups and number of attempts. As age increases, perceived stress increases, and as attempt increases, stress increases. And these are the various coping strategies employed by students. Self-destruction, active coping, and self-blame venting have statistically significant association. The association between social demographic variables and grief group components was assessed by chi-square test. A significant association seen with number of attempts and coping strategies like self-destruction, active coping, self-blame, and venting. 30.3% of first attempts employed self-destruction and none of the second attempt doing this. 67.1% attempts active coping and second attempt students failed to do active coping. A higher proportion, 58.3% of second attempt students employed self-blame or coping strategy. And this table shows association between perceived stress and coping strategies employed by students. Students with low and moderate stress employed self-destruction, active coping, and venting as the coping strategies. And students with high perceived stress employed self-blame as coping strategies. Discussion. This study was conducted to assess perceived stress and coping strategies among students appeared for NEET UG examination. This study showed that higher proportion of students had moderate and high perceived stress. That is, 49% of them had moderate and 46% had high perceived stress. Students appeared for second attempt had high perceived stress. A significant statistical association seen with number of attempts and coping strategies like self-destruction, active coping, self-blame, and venting. A higher proportion of second attempt students employed self-blame as coping strategy. Students with high perceived stress employ self-blame as coping strategy. Students with low moderate stress employ self-destruction, active coping, venting as coping strategy. A study conducted at Nepal showed that undergraduate medical students used the self-blaming, planning, self-destruction, denial, and venting to relieve their stress levels. This was similar to our study results. Not much of the studies explain the stress levels among students appeared for NEET UG examination, and this study is an attempt to assess perceived stress and score among them. By identifying these students, we can help them reviewing their study timetable, advising them to stick to timetable as much as possible to elevate stress, have to tell them to use desirable coping strategies to reduce stress. Efficient coping strategies are prepared for students to deal with various stressors. Further research might be recommended for assessing stressors, determining factors for the perceived stress. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shobna. What would you say is the cutoff point in your scale for intervention in terms of perceived stress?
So I would like to say high perceived stress students are to be intervened.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shobna. It was a nice presentation, and I think it is a very important topic in these times because of the undue anxieties that participants have in facing NEET. It's a timely study, and I hope that you follow up on this study and do it on a larger sample size and take up this as your topic of interest. Thank you. Now we move on to Dr. Papagatla Chaitanya Vardhan Reddy, whom I hope is online and is connected now. Yeah, he's going to present his paper titled Age at First Use of Alcohol and Dependence Pattern and Observational Study. Over to you, Dr. Chaitanya Vardhan.
Yes.
I
I didn't yet receive the share screen permission, access. Someone else is sharing screen currently. Yes. Okay. Can I start, sir?
Please go ahead, Doctor.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir, and good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Chaitanya Vardhan Reddy, second year postgraduate from PES Medical College, Kuppam. Today I'm going to talk about my study titled Age at First Use of Alcohol and Dependence Pattern, an observational study. And I did this under guidance of our professor, Dr. Srilata. Introduction. Alcoholism is attributed to as a cause of 17% of neuropsychiatric disorders among men in India. Alcohol use is typically initiated in adolescence, both for its positive and arousal effects, and usually to conform with peers. And adolescents drink twice as much as adults in a drinking setting. A study from India suggests that there has been a substantial increase in adolescent drinking onset in more recent birth cohorts. The risk-taking behavior of adolescents coupled with the dynamic process of brain maturation contributes to heavy consumption, and also religion, culture, family history of alcoholism and socioeconomic factors all play an important role in initiation as well as maintaining the habit of alcohol consumption. Early age of first drink is associated with an increase in later life alcohol complications, including heavy drinking, alcohol-related injuries, and there is also higher risk for developing dependence at an adult life point with the early first drink. And it is postulated that early age of drinking onset is associated with less frequent use of alcohol-specific protective strategies, thus leading to alcohol-related problems. This association reflects willful rather than uncontrolled heavy drinking. Such a pattern is governed by poor decision-making or reward processing skills. Explanations concerning why alcohol use increases the risk of later alcohol problems are varied. Some experts assert that early use interferes with important cognitive and social learning processes that determine healthy social functioning of later life. Others suggest that early use is simply a correlate of some unknown condition or circumstances, such as a childhood psychiatric disorder, that is causally related to the manifestation of alcohol problems. A third position suggests that there is alcohol in early adolescence increases vulnerability to subsequent alcohol problems because it occurs at a time when environmental conditions such as onset of puberty and concerns regarding opinions of peers on oneself, they strongly support continued and regular use of alcohol. In a community sample from South India, drinking before legal age of 21 years was found to be associated with high risk alcohol use. Later works established in clinical population of the alcohol dependence, but they were confined only to few aspects of dependence. No analysis of abstinence, relapses, health effects and withdrawal profiles has been done in any of this comprehensive. This study attempts to gain insights into the effects of age at first drink of alcohol and various aspects of alcohol dependence. The aim of this study was to determine association between age of first use of alcohol and severity of alcohol dependence. Methodology, study design, cross-sectional observational study plan approved by Institutional Research and Ethical Committee conducted at PSIMS Kuppam, Andhra Pradesh. Study population, the patients visiting psychiatric OPD are aged more than 18 years with a history of alcohol use who fit for the ICD diagnosis of alcohol dependence syndrome. And sampling was purposive sampling. 94 people were recruited with age above 18 years and history of alcohol amounting to the diagnosis of alcohol dependence syndrome from ICD, and those of the patients visiting the psychiatric OPD in PSIMS or hospital, they were included in the study. And exclusion criteria, people with history of other substances than alcohol and tobacco and unstable patients who were unable to complete the interview were excluded. Collection of data, data was collected through a semi-structured interview with a specially prepared proforma, including socio-demographic profile and tools listed below and a consent form. The tools used were, apart from modified Kupaswamy scale to assess socioeconomic class, SADQ questionnaire, severity of alcohol dependence questionnaire was used as a measure of severity of dependence of alcohol. As found, this was provided as a free resource by Edwards and Ross. And international classification of diseases for the diagnostic criteria for alcohol dependence syndrome was also used. Statistical analysis, the data was assessed with processed with MS Excel 2007 and assessed with statistically with SPSS version 20, and descriptive statistics were analyzed as follows. The categorical data was analyzed using percentage and continuous data using mean and standard deviation. Inferential statistics were analyzed with chi-square test, Fisher exact test. The probability value of less than 0.05 was considered as statistically significant. Coming to the results, the distribution according to age in the sample, the distribution was even in the age groups of 25 to 48. It was 18, 17, 16 and 18. So most of the majority of the people were from these four age groups and they were evenly distributed, while the extremes were very few. Only 3 were from 18 to 24 age group and only 5 were from 60 to 66 age group. And coming to the marital status, 60 of them, the major chunk of the patients were married, while the next majority were unmarried patients, followed by separated people. 5 were divorced and 5 were widows. Socioeconomic class, most of them, majority of them were from lower middle class and followed by upper middle class, and the highest is lower class. Coming to the
Doctor, you need to rush.
SATQ
You have
scores.
30 seconds.
Okay, sir. SATQ scores in 3 groups, and these were the dependence at which age began, in comparison with the age at first intake of alcohol. So it's very recent to the onset of intake of alcohol in the age group 18 to 21. In men aged more than 15 years who drink, total per capita alcohol consumption is 32.1 liters of fuel alcohol, and legal age for alcohol consumption in different states varies from 18 to 25 years. And here we have taken a category for under 18 as well. And the study sample was complete male group with 85% of male people, and our study establishes that higher severity of dependence with about 88.9% people who had drink before 18 years had severe dependence, and only 64% and further less in 33% in the subsequent age groups. First drink between 18 and 21, 64% had severe dependence. First drink between 22 to 25 years, 33% had severe dependence. So later the first drink, lesser the number of people in severe dependence. And also we look at genetic predisposition and genetic vulnerabilities interacting with the neurological maturity. And limitations of my study, it's a hospital-based study, and from a rural area, it's not representative of the community, and other substances were excluded, and it's a correlation study. Association and direction of association could not be found out. Recall bias of first age of alcohol is quite possible with the subjects of various ages. In conclusion, I'd say that study shows that age at first alcohol is an important modifiable environmental risk factor, and it increases severity of alcohol dependence in the later life. Thus, delaying the first drink may act as a protective factor against developing alcohol use disorders and related complications. Although it has to be established if any intervention can delay onset of alcohol use and in turn reduce the development of dependence in later life, the consequences of alcohol use and dependence are and medical, social, and public health importance is already established and need not be re-emphasized. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Papagatla. That was a nice study. Possibly we could have gone on to discuss it in more detail, but for the lack of time. I like the fact that you just took two variables and compared to each other. And possibly, sometimes you said it is not a correlational study, where in fact you were correlating. But I think that's to do with the design. And I think
we got limited to correlation, sir. We would like to go for an association approach, sir, and the direction of association if possible, sir.
Okay, that will be good. That will be good if you can go on with this.
Yeah, we are planning for that, sir, and also we are trying to include withdrawals, number of relapses, every other parameters as well, sir.
Okay, thank you. Wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, sir.
With that, we conclude the session. Thank you, everyone, for cooperating.
Thank you,
Is
sir.
there any other further announcements?
Yes, sir. I welcome Dr. Vinod to honor Dr. Jay Prakash.